and welcome. My name is Diane Pratt, and I'm the Executive Director of the Cape Cod Center for Women. I'm excited and thrilled to see so many of you joining us here this evening. The Cape Cod Center for Women is the only emergency shelter on Cape Cod and the islands for women and children that are fleeing domestic violence. We provide safe shelter, clothing, food, advocacy. We assist with transportation, housing, and support. Our clients can stay with us until they are ready, emotionally and physically, to go out on their own. We accompany them on their journey from despair and trauma to personal, powerful glory. We operate a safe house, and we also have an administrative office here in Falmouth. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we thought that it would be a wonderful way to commemorate this with a candlelight vigil to honor these angels that are no longer with us, and also to celebrate their survivors and their families and friends. I hope that as you listen to the speakers tonight, you will find it informative, educational, and so very impactful. It takes amazing courage for these survivors to speak out and to share their stories. Many people will ask, what is domestic violence? Domestic violence is a pattern of behavior that is used to establish power and control over another person through fear and intimidation, often including the threat or use of violence. Domestic violence can include physical, emotional, psychological, economic, and sexual abuse. Abusers use threats, intimidation, isolation, and other behaviors to gain and maintain power over their victims. Domestic violence can affect anyone, regardless of income, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, or religion. 1 in every 4 women will experience domestic violence in her lifetime. Domestic violence occurs in same-sex relationships, and men can be victims as well. I wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the DV, or domestic violence victims. Women experience more than 4 million physical assaults and rapes because of their partners, and men are victims of nearly 3 million physical assaults. Women are more likely to be killed by an intimate partner than men. Women ages 20 to 24 are at the greatest risk of becoming victims of domestic violence. Every year, 1 in 3 women who is a victim of homicide is murdered by her current or former partner. A little bit about the families. Every year, more than 3 million children witness domestic violence in their homes. Children who live in homes where there is domestic violence also suffer abuse and neglect at very high rates, usually 30 to 60%. A 2005 Michigan study found that children exposed to domestic violence at home are more likely to have health problems, including becoming sick more often, having frequent headaches or stomach aches, and being more tired and lethargic. Another study found that children are more likely to intervene when they witness severe violence against a parent, which can place the child at great risk for injury or even death. Domestic violence is most likely to occur between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. More than 60% of domestic violence incidents happen at home. There's a quote from Maya Angelou that I would like to share with you. I have learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. When we started planning this vigil, I was fortunate enough to connect with Gabby Rowland, who is with us tonight and who is co-hosting this vigil with her organization, Break the Silence. And now it is with the greatest of pleasure and respect that I introduce my friend, Gabby Rowland.
First off, I want to say thank you to everyone who's here tonight. It's fantastic to see so many faces because domestic violence is something that is so close to my heart in raising awareness. You're here today because you've decided to take a stand against domestic violence with me. It not only plagues our community, but communities across the world. We can only truly combat the violence together, so I commend each and every one of you for standing strong with us tonight. I was once a victim, but now I'm proud to say I'm a strong survivor. For 6 consecutive days, I was abused in the most sick, twisted, and heinous ways possible by a man who claimed to love me. I met him when I was in junior high, and we reconnected in 2010. We started dating in 2011, and just 4 months into our relationship, he started serving a year sentence in jail. I stood by faithfully. Meanwhile, he painted a very pretty picture of what our life could be. He promised me only the best, as the sky was the limit for us. He talked of a house on a big lawn with a white picket fence, kids and a dog running around. We had even conceived a child together shortly after he was released from jail. 2 months later, I had had a miscarriage. I believed we had potential to be that one couple that people would look at and wish they were us. That all changed late June 2013 when he suddenly felt the need to drag me into his cesspool of a lifestyle. It all started with him accusing me of being unfaithful to him while he was in jail. He didn't believe that I only had eyes for him. His verbal abuse escalated into physical abuse before I even knew it. I was hit across my face by the back of his hand on numerous occasions. Pulled back into his car by my hair and belittled over and over again. I couldn't wrap my head around what was happening and couldn't imagine things getting worse, but my abuser could. He beat me with a belt across my rear end in the middle of the woods during broad daylight. Forcibly injected me with heroin against my will for the majority of the week, and even sometimes multiple times a day. Throughout the week, I was told I'm sick of you and your lies, you're a whore, you're a slut, and the best you'll ever get. What he said to me as we drove over the Bourne Bridge, which I thought would be the last words I'll ever hear, was, I'm going to bring your body out to Western Mass and no one will find you. After being threatened with death, I didn't think things could get worse. But I was then forced to perform inhumane sexual acts on his dog. Afterwards, he raped me. The worst part of it all was he filmed it to use as blackmail if I told anyone what he made me do. On July 5th, 2013, I broke my silence. I left him to save my life. I left him because I respected myself. I am 462 days free of his abuse. I have felt hopeless, destroyed, unlovable, and tainted, but I have remained resilient every day. I am a good person with a heart of gold, and I know now that I am not to blame for these horrific acts of pure evil. I have since connected with survivors around the country through an organization by the name of Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence, also known as BTS. I have found women across the country who understand me on a deeper level. I gained strength, courage, and wisdom from each and every one of them. I am currently in the process of starting a Massachusetts BTS team. I hope to connect survivors locally because I believe it is crucial in the recovery of abuse to have a strong support system, and BTS has done just that for me. I am made up of yesterday's despair, today's hope, and tomorrow's dreams. Through every positive move I have made, I've gotten to where I am today. I am stronger than I was last summer. I am stronger than I was yesterday. And I will be even stronger tomorrow, because nothing can stop me. He did not win this war. I did. I am not what happened to me, but what I choose to become. Tonight, I have shared my story with you to raise awareness on domestic violence, and to show you that domestic violence is real. It can happen to anyone. It happened to me. Some women cannot break their silence because they are still trapped, or they have been silenced by their abuser. Tonight, I speak for every beautiful angel we have lost to domestic violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby. As you can all be very aware that, it's very difficult for Gabby to share her story, and we just hope that everyone understands the amount of strength that it took for her to do this. I would now like to invite Falmouth Police Captain Brian Reed and Carmen Espinoza, the domestic violence advocate for the Falmouth Police Department, to come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you, Gabby. I'm Captain Reed. I'm the captain of the Detective Division at the Falmouth Police Department. And Chief Dunn wanted to be here tonight, and I assure you that it was important to him. He felt sick. It was a gift I gave to him earlier this week. I'm mostly recovered, so I get volunteered to be here for him, and I couldn't be more proud to have been asked to be here. As I was driving here, I realized that I hadn't prepared a speech because the chief was going to be here, and so I wanted to know. I asked myself, what can I say to these people that's going to resonate, that's going to make sense and fit with the theme of the night? And it occurred to me that I didn't really have to write a speech. I could just kind of talk to you from my own history and who I am. I was born and raised in rural Virginia, raised by a single mother with my two brothers, who was perpetually between bad relationships. Like many of you, I have known abuse, I've felt pain, I've known homelessness, I've known hunger, and I'm here to tell you that there is a better life, and you can get there through organizations like Diane, through people like Gabby standing up and telling their story to share their strength with you. So, as a law enforcement officer, I was asked to speak to you about what can the community do to help reduce domestic violence. The answer to that is when people think of the police, they think of interdiction, they think of coming to the rescue and interceding. And most of you who have known domestic violence in your lives know that it doesn't always work quite that nicely in the real world. But we are here for you, and you need to call us anytime and every time. For the community, you need to call us if you think something's going on at your neighbor's house. I remember as a small child being that kid who wondered, why isn't anyone calling the police? There are other people out there who are victims, who are afraid, who need the help of everyone. Not just the adults in their lives, but the adults in their community to stand up for them.
Yeah.
As far as the victims of domestic violence, again, I would remind you that you can find a better tomorrow. It's not easy. It's scary. It's terrifying in a lot of cases, but it is there, and you can get there. One of the resources that we have at the Falmouth Police Department that this community is very blessed to have is this lady standing beside me, our domestic violence liaison, Carmen Espinoza, and I'll just let her introduce herself.
Thank you. My name is Carmen Espinosa, and I've been working at the Falmouth Police Department for 6 years as a civilian domestic violence advocate. And what that really means is I'm not a cop. And so when these women call or come in and want to talk to somebody without the fear of a charge being placed because they've spoken to a sworn officer, that's me. I'm going to let them tell me what they need to tell me without them worrying I'm going to put their husband, boyfriend, brother, father in jail before they're ready. I'll take back father, because if they're minors, I'm mandated to report abuse of children, elderly, disabled, and animals. But most of the cases involve couples. A lot of them do have kids, but they're not going to tell me about that. But the key for a woman or a victim to feel like going to the police and feeling that it's the right thing to do in the right time takes time. And so if they can call in and talk with somebody who's going to give them resources, information. I have a long history in domestic violence services as a therapist and as a counselor and as an advocate through shelters. It's a lot of education, teaching them the things they may believe about domestic violence that are not accurate. That being said, I have a lot of women that call 6 months later, now I've had the baby and it's gotten worse. 6 months later, now the baby's, 6 months old and he's getting worse. So it's a process, and everyone in domestic violence knows it takes many attempts to get out. So my biggest, I think, the biggest thing that I have to offer is that they can call and talk to me or come in or email me, and I will listen without judging them, without telling them, unless you press charges, we're not going to work with you. You're wrong for not pressing charges. You're wrong for staying, because none of those things are the way to handle this. There's thousands of reasons why someone will stay. Gabby gave a couple, and that's a young couple. You imagine someone in a 20, 25-year marriage. There's tons of reasons why someone would stay. Personal issue, personal experience in that. The older you get, the situation changes as to why you stay. So that's what I have to offer for my my victims out there and for the community. I also am available to do presentations for organizations. I work very closely with other agencies, the district court, Cape Cod Center for Women, Independence House, all the Safe Plan advocates. We're all overlapping because a lot of our victims have their abuser in another town or vice versa. They work together. We just all have to work together and keep the lines open so the courts and the police and the advocates all know what's going on, say, with one case. We have cases that everybody's involved, and that's one of the primary things that we try to do also. Thank you, and thank you for standing up for victims.
Thank you to the Falmouth Police Department for their continued support. And now I'd like to invite up State Representative David Vieira.
Thanks, Diane. It's good to be here tonight, and the night that we are going to have a candlelight vigil. We'll be lighting candles in a few moments to shed light, not only on our group tonight, but on this quiet epidemic that plagues our Commonwealth and our country. As Diane mentioned earlier, the majority of these domestic violence cases happen in homes, in your home. And unfortunately, as a new legislator, I had the opportunity to watch domestic violence hit the people's home. We had a member of our House of Representatives in Massachusetts who was convicted and sentenced and sent to jail on a domestic violence case, but would not resign his seat in the legislature. And one of the easiest decisions on how to vote, but one of the toughest votes I've had to take, was to vote to remove that gentleman from office. It was a vote that our colleagues, as we were embarking on domestic violence legislation, felt would send a clear message that domestic violence has no place in the Commonwealth, not in your house and not in our house. And so we were passed unanimously in a bipartisan effort, unlike a lot of the things we hear about at the national level. In Massachusetts, Republicans and Democrats came together. We came together with the governor who signed Chapter 260 of the Acts of 2014. And when Gabby hosted an event a few months back, we were talking about the House initiating this domestic violence bill. And now, after the governor signed it in August, it is law. And I just want to share a few pieces of this bill that is now law in Massachusetts. Massachusetts had on the books a piece of statute that the district attorney's office could use for a second offense with domestic violence. However, our statute never created a first offense for domestic violence. Therefore, we could never enforce the second offense. It was a technical oversight that had been in the law for a number of years, and we were able to close the gap. And so now the first offense is charged, and if a second offense should occur, the higher penalty for that portion of the statute can now be used. The second part, for the 4 years that I was up there, every year, District Attorney O'Keefe, who is actually with us tonight, Michael O'Keefe, and his assistant district attorney, Lisa Edmonds, who is now a district judge, she would come up every year and ask, would you please create a crime of strangulation? Because the crime of strangulation in many times, in many cases, is the first step before the horrific crime of homicide. And every year it went to study, it went to study, it went to study, and this year we created the crime of strangulation in the statute. Right. The third part was dealing with bail. We need to have a little cooling off period. We need to find groups like the Cape Cod Center for Women so that the victim can have a safe place to be after a domestic violence arrest happens. And so we put a 6-hour delay for posting bond for individuals to be able to have a cooling off period, make sure victims are in a safe location, make sure we know what the situation is so that the victim doesn't get re-victimized within hours of an arrest on domestic violence. We also took the firearms statute in Massachusetts and exempted pepper spray and the different sprays. You used to have to go and take a firearms course and have a firearms identification card in order to have defensive sprays, and we were able to remove that part from the statute. And the last two, our emergency housing options. Cape Cod Center for Women is one entity, and they have the ability to take 4 at a time. So when you get the 5th phone call, where does the victim go? We had some ideas and there were some amendments thrown around, but we really couldn't come to conclusion on exactly what to do. So we have a group together, a study group, that is looking at all of the available beds across Massachusetts, where the shortfalls are, and how to increase the capacity for emergency sheltering. And the last one is workplace leave for victims. Like many of the bills that happen that deal with businesses, we said if you are a business of 50 employees or more, we created some workplace leave for victims to be able to go to counseling and go to court and deal with the things they want. And that troubled me. It troubled me when I came to Gabby's event a few months ago. We talked about it and we synergized in the room and we had a little brainstorm. And proud to announce that Gabby, I don't want to call you a victim. I want to call you a leader. Okay, Gabby, you are a leader because Gabby is leading my office to work together with businesses and the chamber to put together an educational program for the smaller businesses that don't have this leave that's mandated in law, to let them know how they can help victims. Not only business owners that have had victims in their businesses, but victims themselves talking about why they didn't come to work and how we can work together that's good for the victim, good for the business, good for the community. So Gabby, as a leader, I want to thank you for leading me and leading our community in that direction. And we look forward to hearing about the training session when we finally announce it. So Gabby, thank you for inviting me tonight. Diane, thank you for the wonderful work you all are doing. God bless you all. And for those of you that might be in the crowd, because I've been to some of these events before, there might be some of you in the crowd that no one knows you're a victim. The district attorney doesn't know, the advocate doesn't know, the police officer doesn't know. And if you're here tonight or you're at home watching this when it plays on television, reach out. We are here for you. The community is here for you. Don't be afraid to reach out. God bless.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask State Senate candidate Matt Patrick to come up.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you, Gabby, for the moving words. I don't have a lot to say about the technicalities of the law, and all I can tell you is that I'm very moved by what Gabby has said tonight, and the things that I have read about domestic abuse, and you can always count on me as a friend. You can count on my efforts on your behalf, and I just want you to know that there are people out there that care and will be there for you. Thank you.
Thank you. DA O'Keefe.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here this evening. I just want to speak for a minute to you about where we've been, where we are today, and where we still have to go. I've been a prosecutor for more than 30 years. And when I first started as a prosecutor, the phrase domestic violence had not yet been coined. It was treated as a family problem. And when police officers were call by a neighbor to respond, they really didn't know what to do. It only became indelibly imprinted on the court when tragedy after tragedy, and I mean deaths, occurred. And we have come a long way since then. Dave mentioned a number of the pieces of legislation that recently were passed. Many of them had been languishing in committees for years. And what happened? Ginny Martell was murdered. And people could associate a famous person with that case, and it received enormous publicity in the media. And it's tragic that it oftentimes takes a tragedy to galvanize public opinion, the media, and ultimately the legislature. The bills that became part of that package that passed, many of the provisions of which Dave has mentioned, are very important. I just want to mention a couple of additional ones. In my office, we've been very fortunate over the years to have great leaders of the domestic violence unit in my office. Tom Kirkman, who I'm sure many of you remember, as a national leader who taught all around the country and later went on to the district court bench. He was followed by Lisa Edmonds. Lisa became an extraordinary leader in this area. She went on to the district court as a judge. Now Michelle Groff is the head of the domestic violence unit in the Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office, and she will bring even newer innovation to how we deal with this problem. And one of the provisions of the recently passed legislation institutionalizes in the law the high-risk domestic violence task force matrix of information that we will rely on to do a better job of predicting the lethality of a perpetrator's actions. And we had trained police across the Cape and in many other parts of Massachusetts to use this matrix to gather information about these terrible events. And they would help us determine, is this particular defendant going to escalate to the next stage? And one of those things, as David mentioned, was when a perpetrator finally puts his hands around the neck of a victim, that is one of the key indicators that a lethal act will follow. And that's why for years we have been seeking to not just have the crime of assault and battery when somebody almost kills somebody by strangling them. We wanted a specific crime that judges would recognize, that had an enhanced penalty, and so we could at least have the opportunity to better protect the victim. Now that matrix of information, the questions that the police will ask during the course of a domestic violence episode and investigation, is now written right into the law. And every new police officer in Massachusetts will be trained on that from the beginning. And every older police officer will get that training as well. That's extremely important. I'll be reaching out to Diane shortly to implement yet another portion of that legislation, and that is the creation in all 11 district attorneys' offices, jurisdictions across the state, a fatality review team. And we will seek through those teams across the state, led by a team that's composed at the Executive Office of Public Safety level, to gather even more data that will help us predict as best we can. There's no magic bullet, but it'll give us more information to present to judges who, under this legislation, will be trained to hear it and to sentence accordingly when certain facts are present. And all of those things are going to not eradicate this terrible scourge on our society, but help us do a better job of protecting victims. Now, I want to add my voice commending Gabby. Not only did Gabby have the courage to speak out, she had the courage to endure the criminal justice process, which can be difficult. And as a result of that, her perpetrator is in prison for 6 years. Thank you.
Okay, I would now like to ask a representative of the Cape Cod Center for Women to come up and tell one of the stories of one of the clients that has stayed at the Cape Cod Center for Women.
Hello, my name is Laurel Ronayne, and I'm an advocate at the Cape Cod Center for Women. I'm going to have one of the girls read.
Hi. I have seen a lot of abuse growing up. My father was very abusive with my mother and siblings. Back then, I was too young to understand anything. I believe I was about 2 years old at the time. Eventually, my mother was able to run away and move on with her life. She then got involved with another man whom I still remember clearly. And he turned out to be another abuser in our lives. I still have clear images of times that I've witnessed him beating on my mother, which was a horrible thing for me to experience. I can still remember me screaming and yelling for him to stop, and I can still remember the fear that I felt each time. But thankfully, that relationship was another one that my mom overcame. It lasted about 7 years from the time I was 5 years old. Now being the woman that I am, I have a better understanding to why my mother made some of the sacrifices she made for her children. I can relate a lot because I see a lot of her in me as an adult. My oldest child's father had his share of abuse during the time period of our relationship. It wasn't until he was incarcerated for committing a crime when I then took advantage of being free to move on. I then met the father of my youngest child. The last 4 years of my life with this man has caused me a lot of suffering and pain, which affected my children along the way. My children have witnessed physical and verbal abuse, which I believe has traumatized them. As a result to his frustration and anger, which he had no control over, the abuse always occurred over the simplest things. I tried time and time again to avoid all the madness by threatening to leave, but he seemed to have the power and manipulation into making me stay. I wasn't financially stable enough to support 2 children on my own, which was the main reason why I stayed with him for as long as I did. I needed his help providing for my children and their needs because I didn't know which other way to turn. All the abuse, manipulation, and controlling ways had led me to make the decisions to how I got to my current situation. I finally found the courage to do what's right for my little girls. I took it up upon myself to file for a restraining order against him and escape without leaving a trace. I can now say that my children and I are safe. We are currently living in a domestic violence shelter and safe house, which is what I should have done a long time ago. My 6-year-old is currently attending first grade, and my 1-year-old is attending daycare. As for myself, I am attending a certified nurse assistant training program. I am eager to start working as a certified nurse so that I can save enough money to buy a car. I've also been on the search for housing, which hasn't been easy, but I am trying my very best. And everything that I am dedicating myself to at this point is for the best interest of my children. I have been in their shoes once, and I want nothing but the best for them, which is exactly what they deserve. I am seeking a clear and free life without violence. This is the perfect time to finally break the cycle and go above and beyond to achieve these goals. Thank you.
Just wanted to share, that was a client that we had, and that was a letter when they're reaching out for housing. They have to give a little breakdown of their life, and that was a letter that she wrote to the housing authority. I thought that was one of the most touched ones I've read. And this is just a poem. I'm not sure.
This poem was actually written by Kim Baker, who is a poet and an author, and she's an adjunct professor at Rhode Island Roger Williams College. She couldn't be here tonight, so Laura's going to read her poem for us.
I'll try. Violence. There's just no accounting for violence, or the way it charms you like a snake, who comes back to the soft of your underbelly, having fanged it so many other times. And why do we always forgive? You make excuses in exchange for what? You can't explain. And take from its place the scarred heart, which you saved for a savior you could not imagine. And you sob night and day to know that you are not strong enough. That violence pisses its most insidious poison on you alone. Yes, violence is a grandfather you thought you knew, who drives a candy red sports car along the highway of your childhood, hitchhikes into town when he runs out of victims, and lifts the lid on all your hiding places until he finds you repenting in the corner, as you so often do during the terrifying sound of his return. But it comes to the wife at her stove. It comes to the bride polishing her life with all its promise, to the child who laughed with a little too loud. It comes to the lover, to the dog chewing a bone, to the prostitute, to the dressmaker, to the nurse healing rows of patients in the night. It even comes to the tree distorting someone's vision of life, to stones kicked out of the way, to the poet's pen, weary with telling the stories.
Okay, now I would like to invite civil rights activist Erica K. Webster up to the mic.
Okay, you know my name. I'm going to give you a little bit about my background and the work that I do today. I'm the founding board chair and the CEO of the Foundation for International Justice and Promise Place School for homeless LGBT youth. So we advocate and travel around the world dealing with many, many, many issues. I'm also the international media spokesperson for the LGBT Compassion Games. I am a community organizer with the Charter for Compassion and Compassion Games International. I'm the vice president of PFLAG on Cape Cod and a partner with Massachusetts Coalition for the Homeless. And that all sounds wonderful. So why am I here to talk about domestic violence? I myself am a survivor of domestic violence. When I was Gabby's age, I met an incredible man introduced to me by my brother, dated for months, fell in love, and was married. And gradually, over the next 6-month period of time, I began to experience little subtle put downs. And those subtle put downs got to major put downs, and it continued to grow. And I have never forgotten the first time that he hit me. And I have never forgotten the times when he grabbed me by my hair and dragged me through the house, and I had very long hair. I will never forget the gobs and handfuls of hair that came out of my head. I will never forget the times that he beat me so bad that I couldn't leave the house for fear that somebody would see me. And I would have to tell my family what was going on because I carried a deep shame. Amazingly, I'm standing here talking and I can still feel that pain. I'm 64 years old, and that was when I was in my mid-20s. For me, the final straw came when he put a pistol in my mouth and played Russian roulette. And I knew for sure I was going to die. I handcuffed him to the bed with his own handcuffs. He happened to be a police officer. And I packed my clothes and I left the house. I was scared to death. I had a 10th grade education because I myself was a rejected transgender child who'd lived with homelessness for 2 years, 2 suicide attempts. And those vulnerabilities are tools that he used to keep me afraid. How in the world would I survive on my own without him? 2 years later, I was working for a company in public relations. Within 6 months, I was promoted into sales, and when I resigned from the company in 1990, by the way, I was the first woman ever hired in sales because it was a belief then that women could not sell. Okay? When I resigned in 1990, I was the highest paid person in the company underneath the president, top sales manager, top regional manager, and had an income in the very high 6 figures. Wow. At 40 years old, I still felt the shame over the fact that I had lied on my application initially to get the job because I had not finished high school. I resigned from that job in 1990 and I returned to college. First, I went and got my GED. That took about 2 weeks and went on to college from there. And today I stand here as the most celebrated transgender woman in this country who is not in the theater or in films. Okay? And I'm referring to my good friend Laverne Cox and Janet Mock at MSNBC, okay, that are in New York. I'm invited all over the world and into every city by mayors, dignitaries. I've 2 years ago was in Louisville, Kentucky to present prayer flags to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and one thing after another. And I'm here to say that as a survivor, it may be very frightening to leave because I know I have been there. And I look at Gabby today and I don't know where she went. There she is, okay? I can only imagine with what I'm seeing Gabby accomplish in such a short period of time, because it was only a year ago. And I remember that well, that what she's created and what she does to organize. And already on ESPN, and I haven't been there yet, okay? How proud of her we are. And I'm grateful to have been asked to speak tonight. And I hope my story helps to inspire others to say, you know what? Life's not over. And for me at 64, my life is still just beginning. Thank you.
Now I'd like to invite Laverne Gordon, founder of Love Life Now Foundation.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Laverne Gordon. I'm the founder of Love Life Now Foundation, and what we do is put on events throughout the year that get people out and about talking about the issue of domestic violence. Too often, folks hear about a shelter or a safe house when they get to a clinic or the police station, and we want to try to bridge that gap between shelters and the communities that they serve. I come to this issue as a child witness. A few people have talked about the ways that they have experienced domestic violence as a child, and too often, what happens is that child witnesses become either an abuser or an abusee. That's not always the case, but I was no subjection to that rule. I grew up on the island of Trinidad in the 80s. I was born in 77. By the time I was 6, I think the earliest memory I have is of my father putting my mother in the ICU. I know that we were at the hospital. He had the audacity to show up at the hospital because back then, I think someone mentioned when the cops showed up to your house, it was not, they were not trained in this area. So it was matched as a husband and wife thing. And so they'd warn him and they'd go about their business. She ended up in the ICU. He would beat her with not just hand blows or foot blows, it would be machetes and beer bottles that he would break and stab her with them. We were privy to every single attack once we were around. And I can't tell you how helpless as a child you feel when you see your mother crippled to the point where she can't even move and she's laying in blood and she has to get up and trudge on because there's 5 of us to think about. And so many people came up tonight and spoke about the reasons why women stay. And for her, it was financial. He was the breadwinner, and she could not afford to take care of us. He had total and full control, and even when she ran away, he would always find her or us, because sometimes she would take us and run. So for many years, she endured that abuse. My father has now passed on from natural causes. And many years later, by the time I was 21, I fell into an abusive relationship. I had always told myself I'd grow up and I'd be a lawyer and I'd prosecute people like my father, because that's the only way I knew how. I did not become a lawyer. Here I am as a nonprofit founder, but I said it would never be me. Until I met this man, and for all intent purposes, you know, an abuser walks around and they're charming, and to the public eye, they are just as normal as anybody. About 3 months into the relationship, he slapped me for the first time. He was jealous, he was paranoid, he would always accuse me of cheating on him. And this one particular day, it was because he could not get a hold of me. The signs were there, I didn't know what they were. He would call my telephone nonstop. He would check in on me when I got to work. And for all intent purposes, I should not, looking back, have been in that position. I was working an entry-level job in sales. I had my own studio apartment, and I was on my own. And everybody expected well of me. And so by the time I got into this relationship and he slapped me for the first time and I said, no, this is it, never again, he came with an apology. He came with roses, purple, mind you. And I thought to myself, man, he went the extra mile to say, I'm sorry. And I took that apology. I didn't ever see that from my father growing up against my mother. So I thought, hey, he's never going to do it again. He's making an ample attempt to make amends. I took him back, and that started 2 years of abuse. The slap never happened again. It was always punches about the body, punches about my upper torso area, until I got to my breaking point, which is what most victims have to get to before they can make the move to say that I'm leaving. I fortunately left with my life. The very last night he beat me so bad, I felt like something had been broken inside. He started from about 9 o'clock that night till about 2 o'clock the next morning. Stopping, coming again, stopping, coming again. And by 4 o'clock in the morning, I felt like I must have been bleeding from inside because the sharp pains that came, it was the worst attack that I'd ever endured. I got up and I snuck out of the house and the apartment, and I hopped a cab and went to Kearney Hospital, where I lived was a few short blocks from there. When he realized that I was gone, he got into his car and followed the cab. Pulled up alongside the cab and started yelling for me to get out. I told the cab driver, I said, if for nothing else, do not stop this cab because this man is trying to kill me. I have no doubt in my mind that if he had gotten into that cab or gotten me out of that cab, that I would have been dead. The cab driver looked at me, looked at at him, and as soon as the light turned green, he sped off. We were about 2 blocks away from Kearney Hospital, and once he saw the cab pull into the hospital, that's when he drove away. That morning in the emergency room, the doctor said to me and kept asking me, "Who did this to you?" All I could think about was, what is my mother going to say? Because I'd been isolated for so long. I had been taken away from everything people that I love, and led to believe that he was the only one that cared about me. All I could think about was victim shame, and being victim shamed or being victim blamed. And not for nothing, I wouldn't tell the doctor who did this to me. I said I fell in the shower over and over again. And I'm sure it's because he's seen these type of cases over and over again. And thankfully, I walked away with a rib and an upper torso contusion, which is inner bruising of the flesh. But by that time, again, my thinking was so warped that, people would look down upon me and say, you should have known better not to have gotten yourself into this position. I still didn't speak up. 2 weeks later, he stayed away for that time, and the stalking started. He would leave derogatory notes on my car, cuss words, and I F Laverne already, and anybody that gets her is getting leftovers. I mean, the stuff was just sick. And one time, past those 2 weeks, he tried to break into my apartment. I called the police, and by the time they showed up, he had already left. But not before he cut my landline, which when I tried to use it was dead. And they said that he broke into the basement of the building, cut the landline, and had all intent of getting into the apartment because they could see shavings from the doorway where he tried to use something like a crowbar or something to pry the door open. So, one of the most major times in a victim's life is when they're trying to leave their abuser. They get infuriated because that control is being lessened hour by hour, minute by minute. And so Love Life Now started all these years later, 3 years since we've been around, and it's to promote the fact that help is available, and that when you do seek help, that you will not be shamed, you will not be looked upon, you will not be judged. And I just urge every one of you here who's here tonight to remember a loved one, to speak on behalf of victims, and thankfully Gabby again is doing this work in the Cape area, just to be in the know that, again, 1 in every 4 women will be abused in their lifetime, and they could be standing right next to you. The problem with this epidemic is that nobody is talking, and so when you're not talking, you're suffering in silence. I urge you, somebody said, if you're looking on tonight, just know that there's help, and if you reach out, you will be helped. So I want to thank Gabby again for hosting this night, and Cape Cod Center for Women. And if you are in the community, stop by, pick up resources that are here tonight. Drop off a flyer to the head of a salon. Drop off a flyer to the barbershop where you commune, because this is where victims can be and are, and so they can then pass on information to somebody. Drop off information at the Y, and let people be more aware that stuff like this does exist, and people are here to help. I thank you again.
Thank you, Laverne. At this time, I invite each of you in the audience to light your candles. By lighting your candles, you're going to honor all of the angels, the survivors, the victims, and those who have been impacted by domestic violence. At this point, I would like to invite the volunteers to the stage to read the names. If you could line up over here, please. Our volunteers are Natalie, Glenn, Amanda, Jameson, Julie, Drew, Juliet, Cheryl, Allison, Brian, Gabby, Megan, and Sarah.
February 8th, 2013, Julie Treadwell, 26, Springfield.
March 10th, 2013, Rebecca Felto, 33, New Bedford. And also April 13th, 2013, name and age unknown, Chicopee.
April 22nd, 2013, Wilmeris Martinez, age 37, Worcester.
May 4th, 2013, Anita Clark, age 46, from Stoughton.
May 7th, 2013, Kevin Paul, 51, Haverhill.
June 14th, 2013, Donna Zolo Pazarsisk and Israel Gonzalez, Worcester.
June 23rd, 2013, Melissa Hardy, 33, South Boston.
July 4th, 2013, Tanisha Anna J. Atkins, 19, from Springfield.
July 11th, 2013, name withheld by family's request, age 71, in Worcester.
August 15th, 2013, Jennifer Martell, age 27, Waltham.
November 3rd, 2013, Shirley Jew, 64 years old, Natick.
November 18th, 2013, May Coombe Jones, age 43, Colt and Cameron Jones, both age 1, Arlington.
November 30th, 2013, Colleen Butler, age 60, Sutton.
At this time, I would ask everyone to just observe a moment of silence. Those were all of the victims from 2013. There have been an additional 12 so far in 2014 that we will honor next year. So at this time, please, a moment of silence. Thank you. At this point, I would like to ask if there's anyone else in the audience that would like to say anything.
I'd like to say something. All these people dedicated to helping other people. It's a wonderful thing. More of it should go on. It doesn't. People are isolated in their own lives, taking care of their own stuff, but other people really, really would like your help. And if you'd like to help them, they would accept it. Absolutely.
At this time, I'd like to invite up Allison Klein, the president of the board of directors of the Cape Cod Center for Women.
Allison.
I'm not going to make a long speech, but I just am very grateful that you all came tonight and shared this moment with us and listened to the words of these people that are working to break the silence and to help each other. I had some music earlier tonight, and I was hoping the band would jump back up on the stage and play one more song for us, if you're available. and thank you very much. I really appreciate your coming.
I believe we do have one more speaker, and this is Jennifer Martell's aunt, and she would just like to say a couple of words.
I wasn't prepared tonight to make a speech, so please bear with me. But after listening to everybody's story, I just feel I need to take a moment to talk about Jennifer, because she was such an inspiring person. Jennifer was 27 years old. She was she was a beautiful mother of a 4-year-old daughter. Her live-in boyfriend murdered her. He stabbed her 52 times, not counting the 27 defensive wounds she had. And it all took place in front of their 4-year-old daughter. Jennifer was a wonderful person. She started this relationship. It wasn't bad when it began. She was in love, and she was young, and she was naive, and she was the type of person that never thought anybody would hurt anybody. She just couldn't believe it would happen. She wasn't brought up in a type of home like that, so she would never recognize that these were signs. She never cried out for help. She always was just so proud. She was proud and would never ask for help. She held it in. She just held it all in. She never told anybody. As a family, were there signs? Now that we know more about domestic violence, now we see there was signs. We just didn't recognize them because we're not familiar with them. As a family, we don't know it. Tonight, I want to be Jennifer's voice. I want to be Jennifer's voice. She's not here. She's not here to talk for herself. So I'm going to be her voice. So please, everybody that's here, everybody is here for a reason. Either you know somebody, you've been affected somehow, maybe you even think you know somebody. Don't be afraid. Don't be like 20, 30 years ago when the police went to the house and said, can you work it out? Can you just work it out? Don't be quiet about it. That's why these people are dead or hurt or traumatized. Don't let this continue. Don't be afraid to say, hey, what's going on? I'm going to make it my business. Let's keep these people alive. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leona from Cape Cod, and I have a t-shirt on tonight dated October 10, 1988. And that was when one of the first Take Back the Night marches occurred in Hyannis, sponsored by a lot of women's group to address the issue of domestic violence. That is over 25 years ago or more. And we are still here, sad to say, having to address this issue. But I'm grateful for all of you here and the particularly the next generation of folks, women, men, carrying this issue forward. And so all I have to say tonight is, sister, carry on. Sister, carry on. It may be rocky and it may be rough, but sisters, carry on.
All right. Again, I want to thank everyone for coming, and looks like the band's coming back up. And I wish everyone a wonderful Columbus Day weekend, and thank you for your support. Good night.
I had wings like no other, fly up the river to the one I love. Fare thee well, my honey, fare thee well. I'm the woman, long and tall, moved his body like a cannonball. Fare thee well, my honey, fare thee well. I remember the day, pouring rain. In my heart was a naked